Hello, it's me. Welcome here. Welcome to episode 2 of Abby's Open House, Kids Keys Caffeinated Convos. Speaking of caffeinated convos, I had the best thing happen to me today. We were leaving Sobeys after school. We went to pick up some salmon. My kids are obsessed with salmon right now, and they're obsessed with salmon that still has the skin on. Okay, just one of them, and then the others like to feed the skin to the cats. So we went to Sobeys, went and picked that up. Stone City Coffee Roasters is there with a coffee bar, of course, and I am a regular, obviously. One of my favorite workers was there today. She is in my grade 12 small group. We're just about to leave and we walk past and she's smiling and she has a cup started with my usual drink. So I'm like, okay, sweet. I wasn't planning on getting a drink, but let's do it. She's already started. I was just jacked that she knew my drink. Honey lavender latte, iced, one less shot of espresso, non-fat milk, and I do a non-fat milk because I feel like I can justify having more than one in a day if I have to or I get to. And I get an extra pump of syrup. So maybe that evens out. I'm not sure. Anyway, so we finish up and I go to pay and she's like, oh no, it's on me. Day made, smallest little gesture by this grade 12 girl made my entire day. And you know what? I think it was a really cool example to my kids on how something just so small to do for someone can make such a huge impact. It totally turned everything around for me. So I am caffeinated from my free coffee from my friend. Catching up with you. It's been about a week. On the weekend, Gerald and I went to see Grand Slam of Curling. We went to the semifinals night. It was Saturday night, date night. We don't often get off the couch on a weekend. We're usually wiped out and begged, so we just power through our show of the month, which we are still going hard on Handmaid's Tale. We went out Saturday night. That is a bit of a quieter sport than I realized. It was so fun. We went and got our seats. We're sitting down. The music was awesome. They were playing kind of oldies. It was really good. I'm a sucker for CCR. Love it. Have You Ever Kissed the Rain came on and I was jacked. Like, that is my song. So it comes on and I'm like, oh, such a good one. And Gerald, he's like, oh yeah, Bob Seger. The guy in front of us, no clue who he is. He's like, no, actually this is CCR. Totally third wheels our date. It was amazing. So Gerald was like, oh, okay, whatever. We kind of laughed to each other. Then a little later, I asked a question about curling and I was like, hey, why do they do this? Something in their pockets they kept looking at. And he starts explaining to me, nope, this guy in front of us, our new buddy, is like, oh no, that's what that is. And he goes into this big long explanation. And Gerald's like, yeah, I was getting to that, which was so awesome. So then I just wanted to ask really dumb questions just so he'd answer and get in there. So I know at the very end, I think there was a tie or something. And we said something about, oh, maybe there'll be a shootout. And the guy, like, he's like, nope, there won't be a shootout. And it's just like, okay, thanks, buddy. We just loved it. It was such a good night. Also, my mortgage broker that I use quite a bit, Ro, and she's actually coming on in February. We booked our recording date. We have been through some stuff together. We'll talk about some fun transactions we've gotten to do. We also just got her through a breakup, which it's been a bit of a ride. We went and got to hang out at one of the high schools yesterday, and it's called Reality Check. My friend puts it on. She is part of the career development for students in the school division. And so it's this event. We sit at the housing booth. These kids are given fake jobs. They roll the dice if they're going to have any kids and how many kids and if they get married. And then they have to make life work on that budget. So we're in charge of the housing. It was so fun. It was so fun to watch these students get totally freaked out and scared and realize how much they're costing us as parents, and to see the decisions that they make based on what situation they're they're given. I feel like our future is in good hands. I just love teenagers. I think there's so much potential and passion, and it was just a wild day. We were talking the other day about nostalgic meals. One of my coworkers was going to be going to his mom's for supper with his family that night. And I said, "Oh, what's your meal? Like, what's your meal that your mom used to make that you just always hope she makes?" And so we started talking about it. And his was beef stroganoff, which my mom never made beef stroganoff. So, like, I love the idea of listening and hearing what other moms used to make that was their signature thing. My mom, I would have to say, stuffed peppers, I hated growing up. Now I make them. I love them. And I use her recipe. I would also say the nostalgic meal would be she used to make these noodles with farmer sausage, and then there was a tomato and onion gravy, and then a whole bunch of ketchup on top, for me at least. It was so good. It was like comfort food. I loved it. I haven't had it in a long time. I'm going to need to ask her to make it one day when we come over. Anyway, what's your nostalgic meal? I feel like I would love to put that up and ask you guys that question. If I can ever figure out how to do that, maybe it'll happen. Anyway, today we are unpacking Abby, a guided tour through my therapy era. Me, just like Taylor Swift, I guess I have eras in my life. Actually, I thought this would be a cool way for you to get to know part of my story. I also think it's important for us to share our mental health journeys with others, to encourage people in theirs, encourage people to talk about it openly. It's not anything to ever be ashamed of. When our book club read this book a while back, it was last year. It was by Lori Gottlieb. I'm just looking at it on my bookshelf, called Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. And she is a therapist. She went through a life crisis, gets a therapist, and during this, she is therapizing or whatever, counseling some of her own patients. And it's how all these stories kind of weave together. So interesting. And in book club, it was really interesting because we talked about our journeys through therapy, and not all of them have been awesome. And so I thought it would be really cool just to discuss kind of mental health journey and what that looks like and what that can look like, fails, wins, that kind of thing. And in the meantime, you can kind of get to know me through that. I picture therapy as this cartoon that I saw one time. It's this cartoon of this guy, I guess a therapist, in a chair, and then the patient on the couch, and in the thought bubble above the therapist, no, above the patient, he has this like big mass of chaos, this big knot of different colored yarns, and they're all kind of stuck together and woven together and that kind of thing. And this therapist is rolling in the yarn, collecting them into all the different separate color balls. And I think that's the most accurate description of therapy that I've ever seen. It's probably different depending on your reasons why you go and that kind of thing. But when I've always gone, I feel like my head is just so full of everything. And it's all just knotted together and tied together. And going there and having somewhere safe to kind of just sort it all out is so nice. And you're just kind of unraveling that big knot and putting it together into its separate piles. As a control freak, I love the idea of getting things just put back together under control in an ordered fashion so that I can understand it better. And then leaving with my head empty again and feeling like I have that kind of tucked away. I've always been a feeler. I've always been very up and down. High school, I was like incredibly moody, still probably am. I remember in high school, I was at a family gathering and I was supposed to read this little thing at the Christmas gathering talking about, if you ate lunch today, you're in the top 1% of the world's wealthiest people, and, about how fortunate we are to be where we are. Couldn't even finish it. I was bawling, and my dad had to finish it for me. I mean, that was a sign I was very unhinged and very unhealthily emotional about things. But I've always felt things really strongly. When I had my miscarriage, I miscarried twins before I had the twins that I have now. When I miscarried, I feel like that was kind of the trigger that I don't know if all the hormones threw me off even more or what it was, but I feel as though things kind of got to get out of control a little bit more obviously. I had to have a D&C during the miscarriage to get rid of the babies because they hadn't made it. And so I had woken up from that and obviously very emotional and crying and just saying like, where are my babies? I want my babies. And so I got my wisdom teeth out a few months after, and I woke up from that and I was crying and I was like, I want my babies. Where'd you take my babies? That threw off all the workers, obviously, because there were no babies in that wisdom teeth procedure. But my hormones just did not go back to normal. A few weeks after that, my parents sat down with me and just said, like, I needed help. And so we decided I would go to the doctor. I would get on meds. I had been so scared at the idea of going on meds. I love the way I feel when I'm high. I love like high on life, not drugs. I've never done that. I didn't want to be numbed. I didn't want any of that joy to be numb. I didn't want to feel like just level all the time or muted. I don't want to mute life. I was embarrassed that I would have to have a pill to feel normal. And I didn't know how accepted it would be. It was before mental health was an okay and acceptable thing the way it is right now. My dad said something really meaningful to me because I really, really respected his opinion. And he just said, like, if you have a heart problem, you would take a heart pill. So why wouldn't you take a pill to get your brain back on track? And that makes a lot of sense to me. And that's the way I explain it to my kids too. And we're very open about mental health in our house. And I think that it just normalizes it a little bit more. I also believe that God created lifeboats. If we're drowning, if we fall off a boat, and we're waiting for our miracle and we're praying, and then the lifeboat comes and you say, oh no, I'm waiting for a miracle. Sometimes that miracle is the lifeboat and practical and life, and that is God providing that for you. I mean, God created people that are smart enough to make meds that work and normalize us out, you know? So that's sometimes my thought on that. So I am on some meds to keep me normal, even. I don't feel muted. I don't feel foggy. I feel great. I definitely still have a lot of highs. I still have some lows, but I've learned how to manage it. And that's been also through my therapy journey. So jumping into that, I will discuss, I guess, and unpack my journey through therapists. So my first therapist was actually mandatory and prescribed. When I got pregnant again after my miscarriage, I was pregnant with twins again. That's a lot of hormones for one body. And so my OBGYN, who was amazing, referred me to a psychologist. I believe it was a psychologist in Winnipeg to talk. And it was really just preventative because I was at a high risk for postpartum depression. So I went there. We were going to talk pregnancy, supports, making sure I had supports in place, just to get a lay of the land, I guess, and talk about all of these changes and for her to get a kind of a read on where I was at. It was not a love connection. It definitely was her schedule and her agenda. We were maybe just checking off what she needed to check off on her list. I, for some reason, thought that it was supposed to be about me and we were going to work through some stuff, but we definitely were not supposed to be doing that. I mentioned some issues and concerns with my significant other that I was really concerned about. I was brushed off. She blamed my concerns on my religion, my faith, my previously relationships. And I believe she really just wanted to keep an even keel. She didn't want me making any life decisions while my hormones were so out of balance. She didn't want to open that box of issues. 100% not. Who would want to do that with like a 7-month pregnant woman? But I didn't feel heard, and I felt wrong for the concerns I had, and I kind of just tried to write them off. I kind of just thought they were my fault at that time. I felt like I didn't matter. In my gut, it was still there and it never went away. But how do you know that? So I did my one visit. I never went back. But my lesson learned in that therapy session is that it might not be a fit your first time for therapy. Don't settle for someone who makes you feel less than. And don't look for perfect either. You just need to find someone that's safe, that's going to challenge you, that sees you. If they talk more than you do, maybe rethink it. That would be my advice on that one. So 4 or 5 years after that, I turned 30. I had just become a single mom with 3 young kids. I had twins that were 3 years old. I had a 4-month-old. I had a new career as a realtor, which was commission based. So I was making $0. I had just moved to a different place on my own with my kids. I had no friends because my friends were from my marriage, and didn't have a church because I had stopped going to that one. I mean, I really struggled separating and then divorcing as a Christian. It was really embarrassing for me to admit that I had failed, and it was really tough for me to go anywhere. I needed help, and I needed to get as healthy as possible for my kids. I needed to make sure that I was looking after myself because I needed to look after them. I had 3 little kids, almost full time. I needed to stay healthy. Enter Stripper Willi. Stripper Willi, whose name was actually Willie. I called him Stripper Willi behind his back because he spelt his name with an I at the end. And it's like, that's the perfect stripper name, Stripper Willi. So he was my next counselor, therapist, and he was the bomb. It was 6 months of super hard work with him. And I would say another piece of advice for therapy is don't go unless you're willing to do the work. If you're just going to sit there and whine and complain, just do it with friends because that's free. But if you're wanting to do the work, you're wanting to be better, you're wanting to improve, you're wanting to change your life, just be real with your therapist. Do the work, take the time, just as I did with Stripper Willi. He was amazing. And the way that he approached therapy was awesome. It was kind of a health as a whole view. So every week I would go I started going once a week. Eventually I graduated to once every 2 weeks, and then I was once a month. And I felt like I wanted a certificate because it's like, woo, I'm graduating every other week. I can make it. Every week he would ask me questions. He said, so how's your physical health? Have you been going to the gym? Have you been on the treadmill? Are you getting out? Are you moving your body? So he would check in with that. He would check in with my spirituality. How am I doing with God? Where am I at on that? How do I feel about that? Have I found a church family that works for me? How am I going to do that? How am I going to connect with other people from my faith? How am I coming to terms with not feeling like a complete failure in my faith journey by doing this thing that's always been something I didn't believe in? That was a real struggle. He'd always ask how my work was. I remember we celebrated so hard when I got my first transaction. When I got my first deal, I waited all week for therapy for that one celebration because it was him. as a realtor, when you start out, you don't want to be like, I just sold my first house, because you want people to use you. And it's like, yeah, haven't sold a house till now. Sorry. But yeah, let me try and sell you your biggest investment in life that costs all the money you have and 30 years worth of mortgage payments. So we celebrated hard with that. And he made sure that I celebrated it with my kids and my family too. He made me feel like I was worth celebrating, which was really cool in a really down time in my life. He would challenge me and ask me how my family life was with my kids. He'd ask me how I was mentally, how I was feeling, and we worked on that. My biggest work with him was he really wanted me to get that support system back in place. So my homework usually involved friendships, going out for lunch with someone, making plans with a friend for when the boys aren't at my house. So he had this bright idea that I should join this thing called Adventures for Singles. He had said he'd had some success with it with previous people. I don't know. So I applied. You had to apply. I had to go in for an interview. I had to supply first hint that maybe this was not the thing for me was I had to do an interview, and then I had to supply proof that I was separated. Once I passed the interview, it was $100 for a membership fee. And then I had to go to the introduction night where you meet all the other new people. That was the wildest night, worst night of my life. So you meet in this house in the city. There were probably 30 of us. Everyone at the time I was 30. So everyone was probably between 50 and 60. It was just people hunting for their next partner. And I was told it was not that. So, and I definitely was not looking for that. And I was not looking for that with a 60-year-old. I was not Gerald who crushes on old people, like last episode, like we talked about. Anyway, I am not Gerald that way. I like people my own age. Anyway, so it was horrible. Sat there for the whole evening. We had to like get to know different people, try different groups, and no, never again. On my way home, Gerald and I had just become friends. We were like literally just friends. We didn't even hang out in person for the first probably 5 months. We talked on the phone almost every day. We texted, we messaged, and it was strictly just friends. There was nothing else there. I called him. I was like, you will not believe this. It sucks. Do not ever do this. It was the worst. I cried. I was like, I'm never going to have real friends. It was just brutal. I waited all week to go to my next Stripper Willi session and gave him supreme crap. Supreme crap to me, because I'm a people pleaser, is like, yeah, so I'm just thinking maybe you shouldn't suggest that to anyone anymore. I've now paid $100, which I'm not making any money at this point. I'm a member of this group and I'm never going again. And he was like, oh my goodness, I feel like the group has probably changed since last time. And he apologized, but it was pretty amazing. I did not make friends that way, but that's okay. It was overwhelming for me, the idea of going to therapy before I met Stripper Willi, to share my whole life story. I mean, I was 30. I'd been married for 9 years. It's like, how do I even start? Where do I even start to talk about and start unpacking all these issues? Where do I even start on like telling you what a crappy wife I was? Like, I'm aware that this is more than half my fault. Shocker, spoiler alert, these therapists are actually trained for that. They know what questions to ask. They know which buttons to push and where to pull information from. They don't need all 30 years of your story in a 1-hour session. By the third session, after talking about my previous therapist, second guessing myself, second guessing my life decisions, the guilt was a huge thing. I still deal with some guilt. He stopped me in the middle of my conversation and he just said, you were right to leave. You did the right thing for you and your kids. And to be affirmed by someone who was an outsider, who had heard me talk about all my flaws, all my failures, along with the other side of things. That was a total game changer for me. I just bawled. I still cry sometimes when I think about it because if I hadn't heard those words, I don't know that I would have been able to just move on. And from that point on, it's like, okay, we're here now. This is where I am. I was right to leave. We're going to be okay and we're going to move on and we're going to get better. And so it was huge. Therapy can be seasonal. I feel like for that time in my life, it was a seasonal thing, but you need to do the work. You can't just go there every week and whine and complain about why your life sucks. You have to do the work or else you're just wasting money. I hate wasting money. I mean, I've wasted a lot of money on worse things, but not on therapy. So my third therapist, this is a few years later. It was right around 2020. So that was like the wild years. That was like the wild west of needing therapy. That was COVID. My dad got really sick, like to the point where for a while we weren't sure how it was going to go. There were changes in my kids' schedules and time with me. There were big financial changes in my life. Gerald and I had been friends for a really long time now. I was definitely friend zoned. Dealing with that, wondering where to go with that, what to do. Do I stop that friendship? I mean, he was my best friend. He was my hugest support. And just because I didn't think there'd be a life for us together, do I risk losing that? I feel like we're having a therapy session right now. So it's just, I needed someone to talk through. My head was full. My head was so full. I was dealing with what the future could look like. I was still dealing with friendships, trying to find new friends. And I found this new therapist. And every therapist is different. So we had to find our way. What was cool with her was she asked how I had done things previously and what had worked for me. So I talked to her about, I always like a little bit of homework. I'm a goal girl. So I'd like some homework every time, a little job to do. So we worked on that. She challenged me. So I started a book club to try and get some friendships going. And these friends are still in my life today. They're a huge support to me. We got through COVID. We did some meetings online. She taught me techniques, like physical techniques on coping with trauma and when I'm in a really horrible situation. It was before trauma was a trigger word or like a real word. So it was something else. But she taught me coping techniques for when I had to deal with a super hard situation or be with people that made me really uncomfortable. There are breathing techniques that I still use today when I'm in confrontational situations. And that's what she taught me. I was so exhausted as a mom. My kids were ages where they're very involved in things. I was losing a little bit of time with them with some custody changes, and my work-life balance was different. My career had kind of taken off. So I was trying to struggle with like working and being with my kids and dealing with the guilt and that kind of thing. She just knew what to say. She understood. She was caring. She was soft. She was gentle. She was grounding. One day I was just bawling and I was like, I don't feel close to my kids. I don't know what it is, but it just feels like something's missing. I'm tired all the time. And she just said, you know what? And she like backed it up with some studies that she'd heard, which thank the Lord, maybe they're not even real. I don't know. She's like, sometimes all you need to do, if you have no energy, if you can just sit on the couch and be touching them, like close with them, have your arm around them or whatever, that is all that your kids need. And I found comfort in that because some days that is all the energy I had. When you're so busy fighting other battles on the front and you're exhausted and you still need to be a mom and you still need to show up and be strong and stuff, I can sit on the couch with them. I can watch a movie and I can cuddle with them and I can hold their hand and then they know that they're safe. They know that they're loved. It affirmed me in my parenting. And she helped me come up with techniques to help my kids and I get through life changes. My mom got cancer. And she was my sounding board. She was the one place I could freak out, that I could worry, that I could stress. Gerald and I don't believe we would have made it to the altar and gotten married without her. It's amazing because every time Gerald would know that I was going to therapy, he would like be on his best behavior that day. He'd be like, oh yeah. Like, even if we like weren't really getting along, I'd be like, have a great day. It's like, okay, it's fine. We don't even really talk about you a whole lot, but it's nice to know that, there was like that really nice day in there. I loved that. I still do that. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I have therapy tomorrow. And then he'll be like, okay. And then he'll call after, be like, how did it go? It's like, how do you think it went? This counselor, therapist, she really helped me do the hard work of preparing and deciding if I could be a good wife. I had already failed once. I'd failed a marriage. I needed to set myself up for a successful marriage. I didn't want to do it again and screw up and make an idiot of myself and wreck my best friend's life too. I couldn't afford to lose Gerald. So I didn't know how that was going to look. She actually came to our wedding and she had become my friend. I had referred everybody to her and some were overlapping. And so we had kind of decided that we would be friends and she wouldn't be my therapist anymore. She showed up at our wedding day just as we were about to go down the aisle, and she got off the elevator and it was just Gerald and I. And I was like, oh, this is Carrie, welcome here. And it's the first time Gerald had ever seen Carrie. Now I'm saying her name. Sorry, guys. And she goes to get her seat. She's like, oh, I'm so happy for you. Congratulations, whatever. So she goes and gets her seat. We had been walking to the ceremony from the room. And Gerald goes to me. He goes, I'm not trying to be a racist, but I didn't picture her white. And I laughed so hard. And I could not wait till the next time I saw her, because she didn't stay for the reception. She thought that would be kind of a conflict or whatever. But she came to the ceremony. And I just could hardly wait to talk to her the next time, because I'm like, dude, Gerald pictured you totally different. And it's, how in your head you picture someone? He just had her pegged totally wrong, which was amazing. Fourth, last but not least, about one year ago, I found a new therapist, which scared me because I had such a good one. I was worried I wouldn't be able to find that again. And it's been a different road again. It was just too much. My head was really full. My career is a lot. My kids are at super busy seasons, trying to figure out balance and doing it all. Being a wife is super hard. Being a round two wife is even harder. Like, I put a lot of pressure on myself to do better and to be better. I deal with past worries and behavior. That's no fault of Gerald. Every argument I'd go into like a fight or flight mode. And it's like, will we make it? So scared. And finally, one day she just said, like, couples fight. Like, this is a normal, healthy fight. And I've been like stressing about every time we have an argument. And we do argue. When you're married to me, you argue. Every marriage has arguments. I'd never been in a healthy relationship. I didn't know that there was a healthy or unhealthy way to argue. So now it's like no holds barred. It's like, hey, let's have an argument. I mean, we're both not going anywhere. We both know we're not going anywhere. We're committed. This is healthy. We're over communicators. Let's do this. She uses scientific charts and logic, which are great for me. I love that. So again, therapy can be seasonal. It can be maintenance, or it can just be a safe place to say things out loud. I have a super private family and stuff with my kids. So it's nice to have a safe place to talk things out. So that's me unpacked. I talk about this not to overshare and air dirty laundry, but I want to normalize it and help others have the courage to get help and to get as healthy as possible. For you, for your partner, And for your kids, we're only here one time, and you're worth it. You're worth the work. You're worth doing the work for. Anyway, moving on to our next segment, Ask Abby. I have 2 questions. I've gotten a couple from people who had listened to the previous podcast. One was, what old person habits do you have? That's an easy one. I am an old person at heart. Well, I'm married to an old person at heart. I love anything paper. I like getting mail. I have one of my Linden Place ladies from the senior center. She's one of my friends. She sends a little card in the mail. Like, there's nothing better than getting mail. I need to be better at sending mail. I just love mail. I love books. I'm not an e-reader kind of girl. I'm not an audible book person. I'm old school. The actual paper book. I will try not to judge you if you're audiobook or Kindle. I am taking a Kindle with me on holidays because it weighs less than the books. Then I can pack more clothes. I like traditions. I like baking from scratch. I still like bringing meals to people. I feel like that's old school. I just think it's the right thing to do. Second question someone asked me, they probably think I'm doing a whole lot of nothing except for this podcast, is what do you do during your slow time? We are in slow time right now. We are getting prepped during this slow time. It's always like this, December, some part of January. I try and take some time. I try and rest up. I still have some listings that I need to be promoting and selling. It's just a little bit quieter. I improve systems. So when something doesn't go super smooth in the spring, I make a list of what I want to change for the following year. So this year, I've been working on a paper that is like, you've sold your house. Here's a checklist of what you should keep an eye out for. You bought a house. Here's a checklist of things you should do next, just so that it's all somewhere. So we made it really nice. When I say we, I mean Priscilla, so that I have something to give my clients. So I've done that. I prepare for my listings. I market stats, things for my listing presentations. When I go, I catch up with friends finally. I try not to panic. Gerald gets really tired of me because I'll be like, I got nothing in the pipe. I got nothing going on. And he's like, be quiet. You say this every year. But yeah, that's what I do. I try and rest a little bit. I try and remember these days where I worry that I'm never going to sell a house again, because when spring comes, I don't remember these days. And it's like, what was it like to have an evening off? Yeah, so that's what I do. Moving on. Current obsession. Cody Johnson. I'm in a bit of a country music kick. Cody Johnson was introduced to me by a coworker. His songs, I love that they're all like stories. I cried the other day in the car listening to his Dirt Cheap song. It's about some developer wanting to buy this guy's land, and his little girl with the pigtails had grown up there, and, blah, blah, blah. Loved it. Still love it. Love a good country song with a story. Got an email. It must be tracking me, saying that there's a concert coming out. He's playing somewhere. So I got to work. I'm like, hey, the guy that introduced me to Cody Johnson, I was like, hey, are you going to the show? He's like, when is that? I'm like, August 29th. You got to go. You got to get tickets, on and on. He's like, where? I'm like, I don't know. I just got the email. Oh, no, it's in Minneapolis. So we're not going. I'm not driving 8 hours for a concert. I'll just listen to the music on my phone. It's fine. It's too far to drive. I'm old. That's an obsession. And I had one other one. Oh, I even have an example here. Okay. It's called Laneige. It's a lip sleeping mask. I am not a beauty girl. I am not high maintenance, anything like that. I love this. I got it. My first time experiencing it was last Christmas. I got it from one of my friends. I got the vanilla flavor. I put it on right before bed, and it's like, it just feels so good. And your lips feel so nice and soft. It's my one splurge that I like. I think it's like $30 at Sephora, but it's worth it. I bought it for all the office girls this year for Christmas, hoping that they'd get obsessed with it too, because it's just like a fun little whatever splurge. So I just got a new one, peach iced tea. Very excited. And that would be my obsession. Aside from that, I'm kind of obsessed with my kids right now. They're just such fun ages. They just got home. Wednesdays are our transition day, and they're usually tough days because I've found that I need to go hard on getting that routine back. It's a transition for all of us. For Gerald and I, because we've had a really quiet house the past couple of days. It was their 5-day stretch now. So it's been 5 days without the kids. We're used to our own routine. You get in the groove, right? And now they're home. And it's hard for our kids too, because they're coming from different rules, different expectations. So the first day I find you got to be like, not a slave driver, but like, these are the rules, get your laundry sorted. We're packing lunches. We're going to check your lunches, make sure they're healthy, that kind of stuff. Because if I let it slide, it just throws off the whole weekend. I feel like if we just get it straight, then the rest is all a blast because expectations are there. And so today, being the day after transition day, it was just supper so fun. They're just fun ages. So I'm kind of obsessed with my kids, which is probably a good problem. Currently reading. I am reading Wild Dark Shore. This is Gerald's idea. I am supposed to actually hold up the book, he told me, because he thinks that's cool. He thinks that would be more helpful. So I'm reading Wild Dark Shore for my book club. I went to book club, my other book club, on Monday to discuss our other book. And finally at the end, I'm like, hey, I have a confession. I am reading this other book for book club, Wild Dark Shore. And like I've seen on my Goodreads that people have been giving it 5 stars. Like one of the girls from book club gave it 5 stars. And I'm like, I have no idea why they think that. I'm not enjoying it. I hate it. What is wrong with me? Usually I give 5 stars like it's going out of style. And I wasn't feeling it with this one. But I'm pretty close to the end. I'd say it's a solid 3.5, maybe 4. And my book club said too, so maybe it'll get better once we discuss it. Because I do sometimes like a book better once we discuss it. So we'll see. There you go. On that note, thank you for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your messages and your encouragement and all the love. I hope that you find something you're obsessed with this week to get you through. And I just want to say thank you. You've been listening to Abby's Open House, Kids Keys, Caffeinated Chaos, Caffeinated Combos, whatever it is. Feel free to follow me on Insta at Abby's Open House Podcast. Tell your friends, hit subscribe if that's a thing. I have no idea how to do that, but whatever. Good luck to you if you do. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great evening. I really appreciate you giving me the time.